Lights, camera, and action.
You want me to turn on the light?
Podium, just in case. Okay.
Actually, it's a light.
Tim's inaugural.
I think it's his inaugural presentation. Yeah.
Actually, it's a light kind of podium you stand on.
Hmm?
It's a light podium.
Ah, thank you. Fair point.
Podium.
We've been calling this the wrong thing for a long time.
What is it?
It's a lectern, not a podium. If you stood on it, it would be a podium.
Lectern.
Yeah. Anybody want to argue with Richard?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the root is the Latin word for feet.
Podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Henry. I'm the chair of the Housing and Community Development Committee. Thank you all very much for joining us here for the public hearing on City Council Resolution 15-0275R. Resolution, There's a Better Way to Assist Homeless. I am joined here in chambers today by my colleague to my left, Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark, representing the 14th District, member of the committee.
Thank you.
To her left, Councilman William Pete Welch, representing the 9th District, member of the committee.
Chairman.
To my right, Mr. Richard Crumrick, staff to the committee. And to his right, Mr. Paul Plymouth from the City Council President's Office. We are also joined in chambers today by Ms. Angela Gibson, representing the Mayor's Office. We have before us a resolution that I introduced last fall after being made aware of a program in Albuquerque called There's a Better Way, in which the city proactively reaches out to homeless and attempts to provide them with a small amount of income and connect them with services. We have reports from the Department of Law, Homeless Services, and I believe the Health Department. What we're going to do first is Mr. Tim Goldsby of my office is going to give a brief presentation describing the program, and then we will proceed to the reports from Homeless Services and Health. My understanding was that Law's report was a fairly perfunctory favorable, and unless you feel the need to amplify on it, we'll stick to the comments from Health and Homeless Services. Okay, so without further ado, Mr. Goldsby, you can speak from the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the council. So briefly, to give a synopsis of the bill, it was brought up when the mayor of Albuquerque was driving to work one day, and he saw a man standing on the side of the street with a sign that said, "We'll work for food." And so as he drove into the staff meeting, he began to wonder how exactly could he take that man up on his promise about working for food, recognizing that there was a huge need when it came to homeless services in the city of Albuquerque. So the first thing that he did, the first prong of the program, was signage in the area, where they went to 311 and provided 311 with a resource directory on homeless services, and also provided training so that when people called 311 to be served, whether they needed housing or food or were looking for jobs, they would know which resources to direct them to. Then they posted large signs, which you can see on the sheet which I provided for the committee, signs that said, if you need help with food or shelter, call 311. And it also says underneath there that donations can be made at donateabq.org. And so what they saw after posting those signs was that there was a huge boom in calls made to 311 about homeless services. As a matter of fact, 95% of the calls that they received were from folks looking for services to be provided to them for housing and for food in particular. And so in response to that, they expanded the signage program from 18 signs around the city, which initially was funded both by the city and by the United Way of New Mexico, to 37 signs around the city. But they also saw that there was a greater need if 95% of the people who were calling the number in response to the signs were calling about receiving services themselves. And so the second prong came about a little later, around September 2015. And this whole project rather, is new. But in September of 2015, the mayor introduced the There's a Better Way van, where they took a 2006 12-passenger van and refit it and they worked in conjunction, the city of Albuquerque worked in conjunction with St. Martin's Hospitality Center, which is a nonprofit in the city who already had a running program called Project End Homelessness. And they provided St. Martin's Hospitality Center with $50,000 and the van to do a twice-a-week pilot program where the van would go out early in the morning, around 7 o'clock, and they would find either homeless people or panhandlers, and they would ask them if they were looking for a day's work. And oftentimes the answer that they would get back was yes. And several of the news reports that I watched, every single time they went up to somebody, they had an affirmative response to it. And so the van driver would then load up the van with all 12 people and take them to a site that's provided by the city's Department of Solid Waste for either a beautification project or a cleanup project. And they would work 5 to 5.5 hours at the rate of $9 an hour, which is $1.50 above Albuquerque's minimum wage. After the 5.5 hours were over, the van would then take them back to St. Martin's Hospitality Center, where they would have the opportunity to be connected one-on-one with service providers right there. Immediately following that, whether they accepted or denied the opportunity to meet with service providers, whether it was mental health services, housing, or permanent employment services as well, whether they accepted or denied, they were fed after that. And then there was an opportunity for them to stay at the shelter that was there as well. And so looking at the statistics, and one of the major things was kind of waiting for this program to be in existence long enough so that we can gauge how successful it would be. Through the first 4 months, 28 people transitioned into full employment from this project, which shows that it was just not just a stopgap measure, but it was a resource to bring people from one end of the spectrum to the other. It's not enough to just provide medial labor at $9 an hour twice a week, but they're still providing services to try to make sure that the homeless in their city are able to transition into gainful employment and housing. 5 of their clients are in permanent housing now, and 79 of their clients are engaged in mental health services and substance abuse programs. And this is just through the first 4 months. They've had over 648 workers, 159 city blocks have been cleaned, and over 57,000 pounds of litter have been picked up. And so the reason why we're here today, to reiterate what the chair said, is just to discuss the feasibility of this, and I think the agencies will be able to expand quite well on that. But we can see so far through the first few months, almost the first year of the project in Albuquerque, it's been very successful, and this model may be something we could look to follow.
Okay, thank you very much. You have to use your mic because we're on camera.
No, I read. So, how many people live in Albuquerque? Do you know?
I don't know the exact figure, but it's less than Baltimore City.
And so, when they put up all these signs for resources, call if you need help, were there resources? I mean, you said that, for example, the people that went out to work in the morning came back, they were fed, and if they wanted, they had a shelter bed overnight. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm asking is, I keep thinking about Baltimore and the resources we don't have.
Right.
And what happens if we put up signs like that and get a van like that? Mm-hmm. Do we even have the capacity to respond in an effective way? I think is a wonderful idea. Mm-hmm. I just had a conversation with a guy on a median strip, I think it was today, and he looked like I had $1, which I don't usually have any money. So I rolled down my window and, I started talking to him, and he said he did temp work, but they stole his wallet and his Social Security and everything, and he couldn't get back with the temp work till he got his documentation together. So he was because he was new, I'd never seen him before. Mm-hmm. And he was new because he usually did temp work. And it sounded complicated, like you
Right.
really had to help him get his identification back. His ID had been stolen, basically. So that's a lot of service that is involved in that. So I guess maybe not to you, Tim, and thank you so much for doing such a good job of laying it out there. But other people that are speaking, what is our capacity if we put, extend a hand of that nature? What is our capacity to actually own up and honor that? If it's there, then let's go.
So before we jump over to homeless services, Albuquerque is only about 10% smaller than Baltimore. It's about 550,000 people.
So it's comparable.
It's comparable in size.
Not in weather.
It clearly has a slightly different economy going on because their unemployment rate is only about 4.9% in the city itself. This one reason why you shouldn't rely on Wikipedia for statistics is that the demographic breakdown of Albuquerque is supposedly 69.7% white and 46.7% Hispanic, without even adding in the 4.6% for multiracial, 4.6% for American Indian, and 3.3% for Black. So they're lumping together the Hispanic and Hispanic non-white. Right. So it's kind of hard to judge based on that if the demographics line up to be comparable to Baltimore. But Mr. Goldsby, thank you very much. And next, please introduce yourself for the team.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the council. My name is Vidya Donraj. I'm the director of the Homeless Services Program in the Mayor's Office of Human Services. And we're always excited to hear about new programs that are being piloted across the country and new efforts and initiatives that are being tried, because we really know that we need to constantly challenge ourselves to be doing things differently. We definitely need better outcomes for the people that we're serving, so it's exciting to see that other areas of the country are trying programs, are talking about it. The word is getting out. There's lots of interest, clearly, that's demonstrated by all of the inquiries that Albuquerque has received. So we were very excited to read about the program in the fall, and very interested, as Tim shared, about the results that we would be able to learn from this program, and particularly the outcomes. One of the key pieces that I see is really important in this program is the variety of stakeholders that should be engaged in order for this to be successful and sustainable. We often see that when one sector or one entity or just a small group of the regular contributors and stakeholders come together, it's not enough. Their resources are exhausted. So looking at really tapping into transportation opportunities, employment services, and a vast array of mainstream services that could support these individuals that maybe we have not done as well with connecting would be really critical and would help, to your question, Councilwoman Clark, in regards to where do the resources come from? Do we have enough resources?
Right.
We certainly don't want to create expectations that we cannot satisfy. But I think the stakeholder participation in this is where the true opportunity for something innovative and something sustainable could arise out of this program. But I think it's also very important for us to think about what do we want to make sure we're accomplishing, because we do know that not all panhandlers are homeless. There's a variety of reasons that people panhandle, and it's a vast spectrum from the information that we have in terms of what that looks like. But I do feel like we need to be cognizant of what we want to achieve. If we are interested in individuals increasing their income, which we are. We want to make sure that that's happening to a certain extent. Accessing services, what did they know about before? Is this the first time accessing services? Is this a repeated time? We would want to know that, as well as housing placements. And I think something that Tim mentioned also that was very important was job placement, but taking it one step further to retention.
Right.
So job placement is very important, but again, moving to retention and what does that mean for the individual? In particular, regarding the income that's attached to that. Is it a livable wage? And can that person sustain themselves, or is there room for advancement and movement upward? Also very, very important. So I think these are some interesting pieces that we should be aware of. As we know, our resources in the city is shrinking, our capacity and coordination efforts are maxed out. I know we're trying very hard all day long in homeless services to do the most we can with a little bit. So we want to make sure that our efforts are going towards innovative ideas that could not only have greater impact, but allow us to access other resources and systems that we typically don't partner well with.
Having just come through budget season, we're sympathetic. I had a joke from several budget seasons ago about the budget department putting together a little pamphlet called "More Bricks, Less Straw." You know, the guide to outcome budgeting, and so. It is disappointing that it often feels like the agencies we have who are trying to work with those of our residents who have the greatest need sometimes seem to be the agencies that are the most stretched in terms of providing resources with which to do their missions, which may be a great segue to move over to the health department, since I believe they probably share that same feeling. So, Mr. Nicholas.
Yes, absolutely. For the record, Andrew Nicholas for the health department. Thank you very much for having us and for calling this hearing. The program sounds great. It's very promising. We thought it was very interesting and has a lot of potential. And share kind of the same sort of thoughts that we've heard already. I think it's essential, if we're thinking about something like this here, to assess and know the capacity and plan something going forward. A couple of things came to mind, and Councilman Henry, you were involved in the LEAD project. So I was thinking a very similar sort of initiative would probably really be required here as far as gathering the number of services, especially when you start to think down the road towards, getting identifications and these things. That's a lot of different people you'd want to have at the table. So we would be happy to take part in whatever capacity is appropriate for something like that, to plan and think about doing something this in Baltimore. And with the development of LEAD, and it's yet to be determined whether or not these two things will connect directly, but also the stabilization center that the health department's working on. Those are two different initiatives that are going to provide us service where people don't receive necessarily direct medical treatment, but screening, assessment, and connection to services. And so I thought, again, that relates right back here, could potentially tie in probably a very similar population, similar types of services in need. And, we could definitely think about tying all those things in together. But I think definitely we'd support studying the Albuquerque model, learning from what they've done, where improvements could be made, and how it might be tailored to fit Baltimore a little bit better would definitely be necessary. But I'm happy to take part going forward in any way.
Okay, thank you. Actually, and thank you for bringing up LEAD, because I had also made that connection for those of you at home. The LEAD stands for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, and it's a program that started in Seattle. Is it now 4 years? 4 or 5? It's like 4 or 5 years ago, and the model has spread. It is now being implemented in a couple other cities in the country, and there's a large number of cities that are looking at it, or like Baltimore, are in the planning stages for a pilot version of their own. Law enforcement assisted diversion consists of training your police officers to identify those people who would be arrested for committing a crime, which itself is really more a symptom of a lack of service than something malicious or otherwise. And so for those nonviolent offenders who are in Seattle, it's mostly focused on drug possession. One of the other cities, is it out? Santa Fe? Santa Fe, they focus on prostitution. But basically, if the police officer believes through their training that this person's crime results from the fact that they have not been connected to a service, they will offer them the choice of, I can arrest you and put you into the system like normal, or I can connect you with a case manager right now. And if you go and work with the case manager and get connected to the service that will help you with your problem, then it will be like this arrest didn't actually happen, which has the benefit of reducing the number of people going through the criminal justice system, and also it keeps the people from having a criminal record or a more extensive one, which can help them with future employment. And the recidivism numbers have been very impressive in Seattle, and I believe have been a big part of what has caused other cities to look at trying to duplicate this effort in other places. So, but the connection between LEAD and the There's a Better Way, that I think really goes to the popularity of the There's a Better Way program among people who are just hearing about it, and their immediate response is, wow, that sounds great. I will tell you, I learned about this program through social media last fall, and even after putting the resolution in, continued to have people reach out to me with, have you seen this? And I think that what attracts people to it is the proactivity, the idea that instead of sitting back and waiting for customers to come to us needing help, that this is the core element in this is the idea that the city is using its proactive efforts to go look for people who need help. And especially when far too often what the city gets publicity for in terms of proactivity is the clamping down on homeless populations. That's what we get publicity for. We don't get publicity for the level of service delivery we're actually providing. But this would be a more proactive kind of service delivery than I think we're providing now. And that was what I was hoping you could speak to a little bit, is could you talk a little bit about what proactive services, and this wouldn't even necessarily just have to be the city, but what kind of outreach do the city and our partners do in looking for the people who need our help?
So outreach activities do exist, and it is actually one of the areas that we need to augment and expand as much as possible. And it happens, through the week. We've got several teams that go out. We have certain areas that they frequent more aggressively. So outreach is occurring all the time, and that's within the areas that we coordinate.
I'm going to interrupt to ask a question which is going to sound silly, but it's actually meant seriously. When our teams go out to do outreach, do they go out in a big 12-person van that's been clearly painted and marked to show that they are people who are out trying to offer help?
Sure.
Or do they go out in private vehicles?
So typically they're in two-person teams, and typically in private vehicles if they're not on foot, and often with a tag that identifies them, and sometimes not, depending on where they are. Trust is a huge element in that type of work, and our outreach workers are really versed in interacting with this population. But as I mentioned, we certainly need more of that capacity here in the city. However, that's not the only way that individuals are reached. We have a huge private community of churches and individuals in associations and other groups that also do a lot of interacting with homeless individuals. So I do think there is room for improvement in terms of the organized outreach activities that we're able to coordinate, without a doubt. We also have very, very active business associations and trade associations within the city that are very interested in what's going on with the homeless population or panhandling in general. And I think that can be an opportunity as well to spread the word and access resources that we've typically not accessed.
There's a lot of moving parts here. So there is money, right, we are getting federal money that's going to the Baltimore, there's a umbrella organization that has money, lots of money, to send people out to work with our homeless. And then they, in turn, it doesn't come to the city of Baltimore. Am I ringing a bell with you yet? It's the Baltimore Behavioral Health Association. Okay, I can never remember that. All right, so the feds have money to go out and work and deliver services and connect or case manage or something with Baltimore's homeless population. We don't get that money directly here at city government. It goes to this organization that's like that gets money. And then they, in turn, subcontract to various grassroots organizations who presumably somewhere this money gets spent to send people out. I'm just trying to figure out who's the army in this army. To go out and work with the homeless. Who's in charge of the effectiveness and the day-to-day activities and who's accountable for all those people that the feds are paying for in this city, but that the city doesn't have any control of?
So we provide a significant amount of coordination with those efforts. The resource dollars directed at outreach is shrinking.
It's what?
Is shrinking. The outreach funds are shrinking. It's not a priority of the federal government as it used to be, and the general push is for communities to look for that activity to be funded elsewhere. So right now, the funding that does come into Baltimore City that's dedicated to outreach is being used to the maximum. Our office, in coordination with Behavioral Health Systems Baltimore and the partners that they contract with, look at the needs across the city, coordinate the teams, divide the city into geographic areas, and certainly do as much coverage as possible with the capacity that we have. However, as I mentioned, again, as a federal priority, outreach is essentially going away, and we will be losing funding for that. So
How many people do we have on the street through this program?
I'm sorry?
How many people do we have on the street every day in Baltimore
So in our
through this funding?
Oh, doing outreach
Yeah,
activities right now, probably anywhere from about 6 to 9 workers.
6 to 9.
Absolutely.
What is the amount of the grant?
So it's in variety of, it comes in variety of numbers.
Well, how much
So-
is it?
So totally, we probably have around $900,000 for outreach.
And so
And
we're
don't
spending
quote me
about
on that.
100,000 a person.
Possibly, but not quite. So it also goes for services and not just that activity and connection to services.
Okay.
A lot of cities have already transitioned, moving away from federal and state funding for outreach and moving those activities funded by other sources in the community, looking through the health systems, looking to businesses, looking to other partnerships. And that's the push that we need to make here in Baltimore.
So getting to the program in Albuquerque. So here's this mayor going to work. You know, where mayors travel on their way to work are always sensitive areas. Whether they tear down a whole block of blighted houses on Harford Road or whatever. But mayor goes to work one morning in Albuquerque and sees a guy, says, "We'll work for food." Gets to work and says, "How do we do that?" and ends up with a program that we're talking about today, that somehow people get picked up in the morning, they're fed, they're then paid for about 5.5 hours work at $9 an hour. They're brought back to the starting point where they're fed again. I mean, this is a good program. They made some money. And by the way, if you like it here, here's a shelter bed that you can have for the night. See you in the morning. Now, it's probably a small population of people, but they're saying they want work and they can't get it. It's like I said before. The man that I met on the median strip either this morning or yesterday morning, he usually works for a temp agency. He had one of those cardboard signs, but someone's ripped off all his identification. So basically, he has to replace it in order to get back with some kind of temp job. So that's where a lot of the people are that say that they will work for food. And if we went to those median strips and picked them up every day, if they wanted to really meant it, how do we get the capacity to do that? How do we provide the accountability to ourselves? Look at us with $900,000. Not your fault. It's spread so wide, nobody really knows what's going on. I don't think. Maybe at the most grassroots level, somebody does with their 2 people, but nobody knows what's going on with the 9. It's not organized for that to happen. But is there a way for us to give it a whirl here? I mean, it makes people crazy to see people holding signs that say they'll work for food. And people say, well, go work. But the issue is where, how, when. If we even provided that as a response and began to keep records the way they apparently have in Albuquerque so we knew how it was working, do it a pilot. Do it while the weather's nice so that we've got the best of all possible worlds. I think we should try. Just get somebody to give us a van and a driver and work.
So I think it would present a lot of opportunities. And as you mentioned, in terms of where would people go to work? How would this work? Who would provide the transportation? Will people actually accept this offer to go to work? So I think there's a lot of opportunities here that could then allow us to probably get some benefits in terms of how we are tracking these things. What are the outcomes that we want? Have a very time-limited project. So there are opportunities that would benefit us in many other areas. I would agree. But I would be very interested to see the progress report after a certain amount of time from Albuquerque, and particularly around retention and access to services, because I think that's really important in terms of sustainable change.
Well, I don't care. I mean, basically, retention is very important, and there were 23 people that got permanent jobs in Albuquerque so far, I think, Kim? Yes. Listening to you, I thought that was a remarkable amount of people, considering they're a homeless population that somehow got all the stuff they had to get together to get a job, to really get a job. I learned all about that from when I had to learn about how the outreach workers were helping homeless people get their vouchers. I could not believe the steps they had to go through. I'm sure it's almost as bad to get a job. So if we just ran a pilot so we could figure out what those challenges are, there may be some people out there on those median strips and, that could get permanent jobs that we could help them with. Even if it's a dozen people or 30, who saves one life, saves the world entire. somebody got a chance. And it would, I like the idea. I think we could do it. I like the idea of being able to tell somebody, hey, stand here and tomorrow they'll come by, jump in, you got a job.
Well, and that was kind of what I was curious about, seeing if we could get out of this hearing. I get that we would want to see Albuquerque perform for a little while longer to have get a better sense of what data we can collect from them. Also, it's never hurts to see what lessons they learn from operations, such that we can learn from their own self-identified mistakes. But I also don't know that we have to wait forever, and it certainly doesn't hurt to start thinking about how we would do this if we were going to do this here, running some rough numbers. If they're paying $9 an hour for 5.5 hours worth of work, that's about almost 60, almost.
$40 take home.
Oh, well, it worked out to almost $60, but then there's
75% of that goes to everything else.
well, yeah, but I'm counting cash out, like
just
yeah,
cash.
like in terms of it's going to be if you've got a 12-person van and you're picking up 12 people every day and you're doing it twice a week, it works out to a smidge under $75,000 a year if you run it year round, and
Including the pay?
including the well, no, that's just the pay. That's not that's not the cost of running the van. That's not the cost of paying the driver. And was Albuquerque just one person, or are there two people in the? They do one person. We're used to doing 2-person outreach teams, and I can definitely see why you might want to do it as a 2-person team, if only so that the person driving the van has somebody else in the van to be, taking down information, having conversations with the other people in the van, coordinating and doing liaison work so that the driver can focus on driving, which I'm a big believer in. So assuming that we would have to find a way to pay what still works out to less than 1 FTE, because it's 2 days a week under their model. So presumably these could be partial responsibilities of FTEs doing something else as well, in terms of they could be doing other outreach activities besides just this program. I guess what I'm looking for is what would be involved in having your office start to plan out what a pilot program would look like. And the reason I'm asking this way is because when I was in college, everybody complained that the student union was a dump, and we was always saying we should have a new student union, and generation after generation of students would come and go, and the union never got any better. And it wasn't until years afterwards when an alum who had lots of money donated a big chunk of money because his kids didn't want to go there because the student union was a dump, did they start raising the money to do it. And that's when we found out that nobody was even looking to build a new student union until somebody gave the first chunk of money. And so my question is, do we need that here? I mean, do you need some funding source to commit to being part of this to even start the planning, or is there sufficient capacity inside Homeless Services to do this as a side project? Maybe like use a mayoral fellow or something like that this can be their project to come up with, if the money shows up in the future, or if another 6 months goes by and now we've got more than a year's worth of good data from Albuquerque and the numbers just continue to look stronger and stronger, we can at that point actually propose something here because somebody sat down and, costed everything out and figured out this is what we would need to do this.
So honestly, in terms of capacity within my program, we do not.
Okay.
But that's not a reason to think about how would we move this forward. So within my program, there's the ability to inform. We also access from time to time, as you mentioned, fellows and AmeriCorps workers, et cetera, all of those opportunities we maximize as much as possible. We also have our continuum of care that has just been reorganized. And that's a body within the entire community that's interested in any kind of activities that are going to reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness and connect them to meaningful services. So there's another opportunity there in terms of a body, a planning group. Would we need seed money to get started? More than likely we would, without a doubt, more than likely we would. It would be wonderful to have a solid planning team and an effort that is comprehensive, that has been deliberate and not necessarily somebody else's, extra task on their list. And that planning effort should definitely be comprised of a variety of stakeholders that we need at the table. I think the other key piece to this, and we just touched on it lightly earlier, was the employment piece and the vast array of employment opportunities. So I know in the Albuquerque piece, they spoke specifically about, I think landscaping, might be some cleanup pieces, and those are very good opportunities, but looking at a scope of more diverse skill sets and job opportunities, I think would be beneficial in this. So in terms of planning, I think we could benefit from a really intense, comprehensive planning process to get ready for this type of activity. Seed money, I would say that could never hurt, and that certainly gets others to come on board. But again, the key would be in that planning process to have as many stakeholders as possible at the table so that it becomes more meaningful and accessing different systems becomes a little bit more easier.
Okay. All right, so at this point, I would open up the floor if there was public testimony or questions. But if there aren't any, and I'm looking to see if there would be. I'm not prodding. This is just like, do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Okay. Just come up here and introduce yourself.
I'm Carolyn Johnson. I'm the managing attorney at the Homeless Persons Representation Project. So I was, this program is new to me as well. So thank you for, raising this as a potential, and we're looking forward to learning more about the program. Some initial reactions. I think the way the Albuquerque program works seems to be specifically targeting panhandlers. So you may want to, and I haven't seen all their data, but that may skew heavily towards the male homeless population. And you may want to consider some other engagement opportunities besides looking for panhandlers. There may be men or women in shelter with or without children that may also want that opportunity to do work for a day and for looking for long-term employment. So it's a very narrow target for them. So just something to think about. And also, Vidya touched on this a little bit, but the type of work that's being done in Albuquerque seems to be manual labor work, which may not be accessible to everyone that wants to work and is able to work to do that particular type of work. You also have folks that have a variety of public benefits, and you have to be concerned about how this may impact the benefits programs that they're on. Make sure people are fully informed about how it might impact. If someone has a disability application pending and they're engaging in this type of activity, it may not, be what they should be doing. Or even if they're on benefits, and they want to try to work, there are very specific rules about how they have to go about doing that, and they're pretty complicated. So
Actually, I'm going to jump in here to say that this was in Tim's fact sheet, but I'm not sure if it got covered in the presentation, that there is a limitation on how much any one person can earn per year through their program. And I think it is specifically to make sure that it avoids running afoul of crossing any of those thresholds.
Yeah, so that's something to, look at in more detail. For a lot of folks who are on the state TDEP program, which is $185 a month, any money they earn is required to be reported and would reduce that benefit, and things can get complicated with food stamps and Social Security as well. So just something to be aware that people should know what those consequences might be. I guess the other issue that was raised again is the connection to long-term employment in the services to really get rid of some of the barriers that people have, mental health and substance abuse and criminal records. A lot of folks in the homeless population already do day labor work through the temp agencies, like the one that you met. Sure. And there's a reason why they're doing temp work long-term, is because they have these other issues that they're not able to get resolved. And so they do this day labor work. So addressing those, barriers like criminal records and things like that, and just, low literacy, and the list can go on and on about what is preventing someone from getting a job, that those connections would be really important versus just setting up basically another day labor project that doesn't typically lead to long-term employment for people that are in that business now. So,
well, and I'll look forward to Tim chiming in. Definitely, I agree. First of all, that from what I have read, it definitely seems like the mayor of Albuquerque's first focus was on panhandling, because it's technically not even part of the There's a Better Way program. But if you go back and look through the chronology of how it evolved in Albuquerque, it started with a public information campaign to discourage panhandlers from being in the street where they may be at risk of being injured.
Right.
Like it was trying to discourage the potential danger. And they also are making an effort to try to dissuade the public at large from giving charitably that way. And I feel like we have done that in Baltimore from time to time over the years. There have been, PSA, campaigns.
and the meters,
Pardon?
the parking meters.
Things
like that.
Trying to specifically encourage people to, if you would like to be charitable in your giving, give to the organizations that are trying to help individuals, as opposed to giving directly to the individuals. For what it's worth, that's a common refrain in community meetings and business association meetings when people complain to me about panhandlers at a specific location. I say, well, they wouldn't be there if no one was giving them money. Yeah, I mean, that's you go to where people will give you money, and if people weren't comfortable giving money at a street corner or one stopped in light and said, no, I've given my money to the homeless person's then that would be its own reduction of panhandling. But specifically in terms of how this program could be replicated, I think that you've raised a lot of points on how we could take the opportunity to make an even better, fuller, and richer program if we were going to start from the premise that the point is to try to help more homeless, as opposed to the point being to eliminate panhandling.
Right.
For instance, the program clearly, as described, targets people who are holding up signs. So maybe that is the first round of the van. The van goes out, it finds 12 people who are holding up signs saying, we'll work for food, and takes them to, that's the low-hanging fruit. You take those people who want to do some type of, maybe it is just manual labor, maybe it is, office temp work, but you connect them to existing work opportunities. And then the program is kind of silent to what happens to the van for the rest of the day, because so from my perspective, the rest of the day, the two people in the van can continue to do maybe the more typical outreach work you're already doing to a broader population where you're looking for people who need services. I don't know if it's whatever in my background, but I get that there will be certain places and certain populations in which it is not beneficial to be driving around in a big 12-person van that has what you're doing painted on the side of it. I get that there will be places where that's not the best way to do the outreach. But for the places where it would be okay to do your outreach in that way, you will get so much more PR bang for the buck by doing that, because every moment that van is on the road, every time it passes a car, that's one more person who will have a sudden and specific awareness that, oh, that's right, this is an issue, and this is what we're doing to deal with it. And if anything that connects people to this issue in a positive way, I've got to believe that's going to have one of those, rising tide lifts all boats kind of effect. If once people see that there is a proactive effort out there, then it will be even easier for people to, donate to it, volunteer for it. If we want to come up with a model that has a volunteer component, maybe that's where you get your non-driver from, or maybe that's where you get your drivers from.
May I say something besides farewell?
Yeah.
I know this is crazy, but I think about it all the time. People show up to work. Now I'm talking about panhandlers, okay? That population of the homeless. People show up to certain median strips all over the city of Baltimore every day. Some of them are regulars. They're the same people day after day after day. But sometimes they change. There are new people at median strips that haven't been there before. My observation is that there's not a contest, there's not fights on median strips about who is supposed to work there that day. That basically people arrive and generally, in my observation, have no competition for that corner, that median strip, which leads me to believe there's an organizing factor of who's assigned where. And that gets sorted out in mysterious ways, perhaps in places where people live, etc. But it gets sorted out, and by the time it's time to be there, it's assigned. And people have even said, I heard, the story of, why don't you get a job? This is my job. That people are assigned. Now, I'm just talking about this narrow but visible segment of the population. How does this happen, and how can we take advantage of the whatever organizational structure there is behind that? And I think there has to be one. People don't just sort themselves out and get places without an organizational structure. What if we figured out what that was and get the people that are running it? I guess they take a cut of the money. It can't, really, I don't know how much it is. Whatever it is, I don't know.
I suspect that some of the outreach workers know some of this information.
And I think it would be because behind that information, for at least the people who will work for food, which are people that are visible and make and represent to most people the homeless population who they really don't see where they really are. Why not see if they can't organize beyond the median strips to the kind of work, day work? So you're not running, it's not like a van, and you're not going to a center at 6 a.m. in the morning picking up day workers so much, but you're working with whoever or whatever group or whatever it is that is, whoever it is that's organizing already around this, but just expand it so that more people are getting organized to work. Not all of them on median strips, but some of them like to do other kinds of work in the city. I mean, somebody's doing this. I don't know who they are, but I admire the heck out of their organizational skills. And I don't know if they even live in Baltimore or whether they're from out of town, you know, like edges of town. I feel like they are, but I've never met them. So I think that we should put that into at least, go see if it's true, if there's some people that have the way to do this that could expand it and help us with this Albuquerque plan.
I think we probably would not want to have that conversation with them at a hearing, but
No,
I definitely think that is something that we could ask
People that are
you
working.
to ask your outreach workers
people. How?
if they have information about how this is organized, and if so, maybe we could have a conversation offline about that, about what they do know.
I'd be very interested. I really would. They all come at the same time. They pretty well leave at the same time. They don't fight with each other about whose turn it is. There's always somebody there. That's organization. And why not take advantage of it? And pardon me for leaving you, Caroline. I
Yeah, that's fine.
apologize. I have to.
Happy birthday.
But yeah, happy birthday.
Is there something wrong with the law about that? No, I'm looking at Jennifer.
She approved your birthday for form and legal sufficiency.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
So yeah, just to reiterate, I think all your points are very well taken, and I would hope that we could incorporate all of those into what planning we do eventually do to develop some type of pilot program. I would also offer, I know my office, and I'll check with my colleague and some of my other colleagues, but I get internship offers every semester and sometimes even the summer. And we already often struggle coming up with, good, interesting projects for interns to work on. So I would be happy to work with your office. Maybe if, I don't know if this is something that Vitaly would want to pick up for the rest of the summer, or if this was something that we would look for an intern in the fall, but we would be happy to, if you would basically just provide access, and I would also look to our partners in the nonprofit and service delivery community, just if you would be able to make yourselves available to our, whoever is working in our office who's collecting information, maybe we could do a first draft of a plan so that you guys would have something to chew on once funding is eventually identified/acquired. So, all right,
Sure.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I note we have also been joined in chambers by Deputy Mayor Don Kerstetter. Thank you very much for joining us. Sadly, just as I'm about to adjourn the hearing, unless you wanted to add anything. Okay, so for those, I'm sorry. By all means, we have additional public testimony.
Hi, thank you for having us here today. My name is Hannah Roberts. I'm the coordinator for the Journey to Jobs project, which is a project under the Journey.
You got to talk right into it.
I'm the coordinator for the Journey to Jobs project, which is a project under the Journey Home Initiative, which,
Okay.
as most of you know, is Baltimore City's plan to ensure that homelessness is rare and brief. So the Journey to Jobs project is specifically looking at building systems level collaboration and coordination of homeless services and workforce development services. So I'm not here to provide comment today, but I wanted to hear more about what you all were proposing and offer that we would certainly be willing to have a discussion about the work that we're doing and looking at these intersections and some of the barriers that people face when they're simultaneously experiencing homelessness and seeking to obtain employment. So
Okay. Well,
I'm available to you to have that conversation at a later date if you're interested.
I am. Thank you very much. Thank you for introducing yourself to what remains of the committee. But you did sign in, so you're part of the record for this. So we'll all be able to find you afterwards. So I think we are going to adjourn this hearing. This is as originally stated, it's an informational hearing. So while we could vote on the resolution in the future, it would be a vote to say that yes, we held the hearing. So I'm not sure if it's important to do that. So I think what I'm going to do is technically I'm just going to recess the hearing rather than adjourn it, so that it offers us the opportunity to come back at a later time and resume this conversation. So without any further ado, thank you all for attending this hearing, which is now in recess. Please check the area around your seat to make sure that you have everything with you that you brought. We will be closing the room and City Hall shortly, so we ask that everyone exit promptly through the first floor. Main entrance. Once again, thank you for visiting City Hall, and this hearing stands in recess.